Welcome, dear friends, to another exciting session. This is part 13, part 2 of our course, Exploring the Advent of Divine Justice. And without any further ado, we'll have our opening prayer. Create in me a pure heart, O my God, and renew a tranquil conscience within me, O my hope. Through the Spirit of power, confirm thou me in thy cause, O my best beloved, and by the light of thy glory, reveal unto me thy path, O thou the goal of my desire. Through the power of thy transcendent might, lift me up unto the heaven of thy holiness, O source of my being, and by the breezes of thine eternity, gladden me, O thou who art my God. Let thine everlasting melodies breathe tranquility on me, O my companion, and let the riches of thine ancient countenance deliver me from all except thee, O my master, and let the tidings of the revelation of thine incorruptible essence bring me joy, O thou who art the most manifest of the manifest, and the most hidden of the hidden. Baha'u'llah. Wonderful, dear friends. So happy to have you all here. Just letting everyone into the room. Very good. So, dear friends, welcome back. Very excited to be with you. This session, we're going to finish up part 13, which is our paragraphs, I believe, 47 through 50. And then we're going to I'm just going to share my screen in a second so everyone can see where we are. There we go. Sorry. There we go, share. Okay, here we go. This is what we were covering last time. Okay, paragraphs 47 through 50. These were the themes that we were exploring. Application of moral standards. Then what is frivolous conduct? We were just about to get to this section on frivolous conduct, okay? And then we're going to finish up all of these themes: prostitution of the arts and literature, practice of nudism, companionate marriage, infidelity, promiscuity, easy familiarity, sexual vices, and lastly, denouncing of asceticism. So we are on slide, we just on 19, okay? So to recap, we were exploring this second part on chaste and holy life, okay? And so we're now going to pick back up into our section on applications of moral standards. And I believe we read this slide last time, but it's a really good segue into our current session, okay? So without any further ado, let's have our first reader. Mahnaz Jan, you are up. Yes.
Okay.
Go for it, Mahnaz Jan.
Okay, I do. My English is not
Your
very good.
English is
I'll
perfect. Go
try.
for it. No, you're
Okay.
great.
The moral standards defined in the Baha'i faith are sets of guidelines for their applications to one's life. This is explained in letter dated by the Universal House of Justice. If he is to fulfill his true mission in life as a follower of the blessed perfection, he will pattern his life according to the teachings. The believer cannot attain this objective merely by living according to a set of rigid regulations. When his life is oriented toward service to Baha'u'llah, and when every conscious act is performed within this frame of reference, he will not fail to achieve the true purpose of his life. Therefore, every believer must continually study the sacred writings and the instructions of the beloved guardian, striving always to attain a new and better understanding of their importance to him and to his society. He should pray fervently for divine guidance, wisdom, and strength to do what is pleasing to God and to serve him at all times and to the best of his ability.
Very well read. Thank you, Matt Jack.
Sure.
Okay, so in this letter from the Universal House of Justice, we see some very key points. One of them is it's talking about this pattern. He says he will pattern his life. Is your life patterned according to the teachings of the faith? And this is something that it's saying that we, every one of us as a Baha'i should pattern our lives according to the teachings. The believer cannot attain this objective merely by living according to a set of rigid regulations. When his life is oriented towards service to Baha'u'llah. I love this language, oriented. It means shifted. We should be in line. So it means that we were maybe one way before. We should orient, keep it in steered like a boat. We should be oriented towards that line, oriented towards service to Baha'u'llah. And when every conscious act, it's not we're just moving subconsciously, or I agree with it, but our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, we should be consciously thinking, am I oriented towards service to Baha'u'llah? Every single act, and it says when every conscious act is performed within this frame of reference, he will not fail to achieve this true purpose of his life. Then what does the House of Justice says? Therefore, every believer must continually study the sacred writings. Are we continually studying the sacred writings? This is something that the House of Justice says. Continually study the sacred writings and the instructions of the beloved guardian, striving always to attain a new and better understanding of their import. Import means their importance, always finding new and better understanding. For example, one of my friends a while ago, when I was serving at Bosch, I asked him, have you studied Kitab Iran? He said, yes, I read that. Very good book. And I was like, when did you read it? He says, oh, I read that many years ago. Great book. I was like, what did you understand from it? Oh, I think it has this. He couldn't say one thing. So these are books that we should constantly study, right? Because what is here the House of Justice says? Striving always to attain a new and better understanding. Because your understanding today should be a far greater understanding of even a month ago, right? Your understanding, your comprehension. And how does our understanding get better? Not only through study, but through service. So these should go complement study and service. And that's why I would love the students of a course such as this, not only be delving into their inner lives, but how can you work on implementing this into your action of your own lives. And so as we're reflecting on rectitude of conduct, chaste and holy life, how can I be reflecting on these elements within your own spheres of your life, within the spheres of your communities? How can you affect change? This should be at the forefront of your thinking. And then what does the House of Justice say? He should pray. He should pray fervently for divine guidance, wisdom, and strength to do what is pleasing to God and to serve him at all times and to the best of his ability. Are we continually turning to him? Are we continually turning to him? Are we, when we say our prayers, do we have other thoughts on our minds? Are we distracted always? Or do we say it fervently, turning to him? These are things that we should think about. Is this the best opportunity and time to say our prayers, that we're not distracted? So these are just some thoughts I'm throwing out. So, okay, moving on. Now let us get into these great and juicy topics. Frivolous conduct. What is frivolous conduct? So something is frivolous when it has no serious purpose or value. This is a definition. It is frivolous when it has no serious purpose or value. A frivolous person is an individual who is self-indulgently carefree and superficial. And this is in the opening of paragraph 47. It says, let me scroll back so you just, I just want to read that reference. It is, I just want you to see it. It calls for the abandonment of a frivolous conduct. Right there, you see that? Frivolous conduct. So now this is why we're getting into frivolous, okay? And we're here. Okay. A frivolous person is an individual who is self-indulgently carefree and superficial. Frivolous conduct is a lack of seriousness in one's behavior. The beloved guardian specially associates frivolous conduct with trivial and inappropriate pleasures. Okay? So, and on the right, this is frivolous definition characterized by lack of seriousness or sense, frivolous conduct. Oh. And now, yes.
Say something to that one. Is something frivolous conduct something to do with moderation? Because I sometimes feel people are too serious, and should we be allowed to have some bit of frivolity in life? And where's the line?
Great question, my dear Gabrielle McGuire. We'll save that question till my next slide. The House of Justice answers it. Great question. I applaud you. So let's go to our next slide, because the House of Justice goes into more in depth on this frivolous conduct and answers that one, okay? So let's go to the next slide. So this is from the House of Justice, written, letter dated 8th May 1979. And I will get Miss Gabrielle McGuire to read it, as she was the question asked. Go for it.
I knew you were going to ask me.
There you go.
Frivolous conduct. In response to a question asked by a believer on the meaning of a frivolous conduct in paragraph 47, the following elucidation is provided on behalf of the Universal House of Justice. One of the signs of a decadent society, a sign which is very evident in the world today, is an almost frenetic devotion to pleasure and diversion, an insatiable thirst for amusement, a fanatical devotion to games and sports, a reluctance to treat any matter seriously, and a scornful, derisory attitude towards virtue and solid worth. Abandonment of a frivolous conduct does not simply imply that a Baha'i must be sour-faced or perpetually solemn. Humour, happiness, joy are characteristics of true Baha'i life. Frivolity pulls and eventually leads to boredom and emptiness. But true happiness and joy and humour that are parts of a balanced life that includes serious thought, compassion, and humble servitude to God are characteristics that enrich life and add to its radiance. Shoghi Effendi's choice of words was always significant, and each one is important in understanding his guidance. In this particular passage, he does not forbid trivial pleasures, but does warn against excessive attachment to them and indicates that they can often be misdirected. One is reminded of Abdu'l-Baha's caution that we should not let a pastime become a waste of time.
Yes. Any thoughts on this passage? Did that help you, Miss Gabrielle McGuire?
Yes, I think I got my answer. But still laugh and have fun, hey?
That's right. As Baha'is, we love happiness. We love joy and humor. Abdu'l-Baha loved humor so much. But obviously their lives were filled with, with pain. And so it may not have appeared in photographs or that they were filled with joy, but Abdu'l-Baha he's constantly laughing and happy, and the beloved guardian attests to that.
Essenjan, I would like to mention one of Abdu'l-Baha's humor.
Please, please.
It's short. He assigned one of the friends to go to India for a service. And a while later, this person has still not gone. And then he asked him to go to America for doing another service. And the man turned around and said, I thought you wanted me to go to India. And he said, so did Christopher Columbus.
Yes. That was Mr. Hippolyte Dreyfus. Yes, I have the actual quote on that.
You do, okay.
That's very, very. Abdu'l-Baha had great sense of humor, very witty, and he enjoyed laughter, truly enjoyed laughter. And so, as it says, that a Baha'i must. It does not imply that a Baha'i must be sour-faced or perpetually solemn. We should be, how many quotes we say that our faces should be wreathed in smiles. And I don't know if you remember that video that we shared of the hands of the cause, that the hands of the cause, they were just so filled with joy and happiness. And that it was that video that I shared with you on the election of the first House of Justice, and that they were always so happy and filled with happiness. And that is how we should be. But what is it saying here? What is this frivolous conduct? That we should not be excessively attached to pastimes that are wastes of time. But we should do things that bring us also happiness. But things that are trivial or are a waste of time, that we should avoid. I think that is up to the individual to gauge what is a waste of time and what is not a waste of time. And that is really what is up to the individual. All right. Now, let us get in. Miss Marian, did you have a question or you're good? No? Okay, moving on. This is on the prostitution of the arts and literature. This is also in paragraph 47. It says, art represents various branches of human creative activities expressed through written, visual, or performing channels to share experiences, thoughts, emotions of an artist. Over time, the arts have fulfilled various roles and have contributed significantly to the evolution of human civilization. The purpose of works of art has varied from communicating spiritual, philosophical, or political ideas to creating a sense of beauty and generating strong emotions. So this is what art is in that sense. And all of you have seen wonderful, wonderful pieces of art in your lives, from musical art to paintings to all kinds of arts. But what is the prostitution of arts? What does that mean as defined by the beloved guardian? So this is from His Holiness Baha'u'llah. This is what he writes. So let us have another reader. Let's have Miss Deborah Birding. Go for it.
His Holiness Baha'u'llah states that arts, crafts, and sciences uplift the world of being and are conducive to its exaltation. In yet another tablet, Baha'u'llah states, the source of crafts, sciences, and arts is the power of reflection. Make ye every effort that out of this ideal mind there may gleam forth such pearls of wisdom and utterance as will promote the well-being and harmony of all the kindreds of the earth.
So this is one of the gifts of Baha'u'llah, is the arts and crafts and sciences, and their purpose is to uplift the world of being. And these crafts and sciences is the power of the reflection of Baha'u'llah. Just make ye every effort that out of this ideal mind there may gleam forth such pearls of wisdom. Utterance will promote the well-being and harmony of all the kindreds of the earth. So this is the purpose of the arts and sciences, is to uplift humanity. Now, yes, Miss Karen, you have your hand, please. Go for it.
Yes, I was in particular concerned about the definition. And so I was also looking it up in Merriam-Webster.
Please.
And there are two definitions of it as a verb. And there are also two definitions of it as a noun. And I found the second definition to really be applicable and in line with the guidance that Baha'u'llah has given us. The second definition of it as a verb means to prostitute, means to devote to corrupt or unworthy purposes. And as a noun, it means someone who prostitutes is a person, such as a writer or a painter, who deliberately debases his or her talents as for money and other pursuits. So I just wanted to also share that.
You're absolutely spot on, dear Karen. I wasn't, see, in the issue, the word prostitution is one definition, could be in a prostitution is the sale of an individual for sexual purposes. But another, as you said correctly, another definition would be corruption and the degradation, the degeneration of the arts. And so that is, that definition is more applicable in this sense. Absolutely correct. So let us move on. The statement of the beloved guardian regarding the prostitution of arts and literature in paragraph 47 reflects the immoral exploitation of the arts as a commodity. The Universal House of Justice, in a letter dated the 15th of March, 1972, written on its behalf, has elucidated this phrase of the guardian in this manner. As to your question about the prostitution of arts and literature, we understand by this using art and literature for debased ends. The word debased has a variety of meanings, though in this context, the most equivalent are immoral, vile, or corrupt. And that is exactly as dear Karen said, this is the definition of prostitution of arts. See, my class is always trying to jump ahead of me, right? We're always, but I'm so proud of every one of you. So this is, as we are saying, as to your question about the prostitution of the arts, we understand this by using art for debased ends, okay? As we were talking about how corruption, the rise of corruption, do you recall that section, rise of corruption? Now this is the rise of corruption in the arts. Okay, now we're getting into another one of those, the practice of nudism, okay? Covering the body. So let us have a reader on this. Okay, let me find someone. Miss Yuda Miller. You're up, Miss Yuda. Go for it.
Covering the body in social settings has always been a common practice in human society. In prehistoric times, animal skins and vegetable materials were used. With the evolution of human consciousness and guidance received from the divine religions, wearing clothing became an intrinsic part of being human and sign of respect and dignity.
So, very self-explanatory that over time and through the inspiration of these divine revelations, clothing became an intrinsic part of being a human and a sign even of respect and dignity. And over time, we see all different kinds of clothing and costumes that all defined civilizations. So what happened? Where did this practices of nudism come from? So let's have Roya Jan, go for it.
Nudism is a philosophical and political movement practicing, promoting, and defending personal and social nudity. Supporters of the movement consider nudity as the authentic human nature state with benefits of achieving and maintaining physical, mental, and spiritual health. As a social practice, both male and female generally interact freely without engaging in sexual activities.
Okay, and on the right, it says nudism, you are what you don't wear. You are what you don't wear. And a nudist is someone who doesn't think people should feel a sense of shame about being naked or seeing other people naked. So this is the removal of shame from being nude. So this is the philosophical and political movement regarding nudism. Any thoughts on this? Or we'll just keep going. Okay. Where did this nudism movement start? It started in the early 20th century in Germany as a response to the rigid moral attitudes of the late 19th century. The first nudist club known as, I'll let Miss Yuda Miller say this word. Go for it, Miss Yuda.
Freilichtpark, Freilicht. It means open air, open air.
It's amazing how many words I have in this presentation in German. God bless you, Yuda, because I wouldn't be able to say half of them. Freilichtpark, okay, I slaughtered that one, but that's, thank you very much. So it's the open air park. It emerged around 1903 near Hamburg. It was followed by over 200 private clubs in Germany and a popular book by Richard Ungwitter, Die Nacktheit. Miss Yuda, can you say that word?
Die Nacktheit, die Nacktheit.
The Nacktheit. It means nakedness. Was published in 1906. Nudism spread throughout Europe after World War I and achieved prominence in the 1920s. So this was the movement that the Beloved Guardian was really addressing, the rises of nudism, because this was around the time that was really being espoused philosophically as a movement of nudism. Okay, any thoughts on that? Any supporters of nudism? You know, not that, hopefully not, but this is what was going on at that point in time, and this is the practice of nudism that the Beloved Guardian.
Yes, St. John, I don't think any of these clubs can form in Alaska or in Siberia.
Not openly in the cold air, I assume, but yes. But yes, I'm sure there are many of these associations everywhere, actually. Unfortunately. So now we're going to companionate marriage, okay? Judge Benjamin Barr Lindsay, an American judge and social reformer, wrote a controversial book entitled Companionate Marriage, and it was published in 1927, in which he suggested that young men and women should be able to live together in a trial marriage for a year to evaluate whether they match. If the relationship was not sustainable, the couple could dissolve the marriage. The couple should avoid having children during the trial period. So this is the guy, Judge Benjamin Barr Lindsay on the right, and that's a copy of his book on the right. Okay, so he was the one that first espoused this idea of companionate marriage. It's a trial marriage. And this is a letter from the Universal House of Justice regarding companionate marriage. So I'll get my friend James. Could you read this one?
In a letter written on behalf of the Universal House of Justice to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Paraguay, dated 21 November 1967, a companionate marriage is compared with a traditional marriage, known as a common law marriage. The basic difference between the two categories of relationships is that common law marriage is considered by the parties concerned as a solemn contract with the sole intention of establishing a family, but which, because of legal complications, cannot be duly registered. Whereas in companionate marriage and the like, the parties concerned initiate and maintain their relationship either on a trial basis or on other immoral grounds, both of which are condemned in our teachings. We feel that by applying these principles in each of the cases you cite in your letter, with wisdom, kindness, and love, you will be able gradually to educate the friends in the fundamentals of our teachings and enable them to overcome their moral difficulties.
Thank you. Very well read, James. Any thoughts on this? It was very well explained by the House of Justice in this letter. These are all social ills in our society, and even in our spiritual assemblies, we see cases of these. I'm sure that even in our communities, we've seen cases of these. And these are problems that we will all have to deal with, whether on the administrative bodies or we see them in our society. So it's good to be knowledgeable about the ills of society. And so this is another one of the ills of society is companionate marriage. Okay, so this is another letter. This is to the National Spiritual Assembly of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And this is dated September 26, 1957. And this is from the Beloved Guardian. He says, regarding companionate marriage and flagrant immorality, we share a letter written on behalf of the Beloved Guardian. The Guardian has instructed me to say that companionate marriage, where there is no legal or religious marriage, is an immoral relationship, and we cannot accept as believers those who are openly behaving in this way. I think it's very clear on that level.
Excuse me, Ehsan.
Who's speaking? Yes, Gabriel, please, of course.
How does this work with what we call de facto marriage?
De facto marriage.
You have that in America?
I'm not familiar with all these types of marriages.
Okay.
If someone is more knowledgeable on this to answer the question, please answer this question of dear Gabrielle. De facto marriage. I don't know what a de facto marriage is. Dr. Byte or Pat or
James is ready to answer that.
Oh, dear James, please.
Well, I'm ready to offer something, but somebody else might have a better answer.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, perhaps the previous slide answered that question, in as much as it may come down to what the long-term intention of the relationship is. So if I understand correctly, a de facto marriage is where a relationship is such that it has become to be seen as similar to a marriage. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's tech, and it becomes legal, if you're living in a committed relationship long term.
Yeah.
It has most of the same regulations. You have to get separated and yada, yada, yada. So
it would be the same as common law here in the United States.
Oh, it's a common law marriage. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
And that's and where does common law marriage stand?
If you sign a document, let's say you a man and a woman, they rent an apartment and they sign a contract for that apartment together, that both names are on it. If they let's say they want cable to come in and they sign it together, any document that they sign and then they're living together after such a certain amount of time period, they're just considered common law marriage. If they separate the wife or the man or the woman can go to court and say that they were married and they deserve certain compensations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Essendon, I would like to make a comment on all this issue of marriage.
Please, Dr. Byte. Thank you.
I think probably I mentioned it once that if we think of a family and what it takes to form it, to protect it, to nurture it, and the role that a family is going to play as the building block of a society, everything that is learned in terms of love, compassion, sharing, caring, all those great attributes that we want to learn, they're all learned first in the family. So as a result of that, you can practically derive all Baha'i teachings without exception. I haven't come across a single one. All of them, in a way, are there to protect a family because of its central position in the objectives that we have for a world. So that's why you will find not just Baha'u'llah and then Abdul Baha, but also the beloved guardian coming up with such strong sentences, strong statements to make us aware that deviations from that central theme of forming that strong, lasting building block of society is a deviation, and we have to avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byte. Very well said. Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course, Ms. Deborah.
We have to take into consideration that society at large, some of the people that have grown up with divorced parents, maybe divorced grandparents, maybe their neighbors, there has been so much breakups and hardships for these young people that they don't have the faith in the contract of marriage. They don't take it as serious as if they were spiritually guided. So I mean, I hear it from young people all the time why would we bring children into this world with all the negativity and all the hatred and everything that's there? Why should we get married? Why is a piece of paper that important? So, and I came from a broken marriage. My mother was divorced twice. So I can understand where some of them are thinking, but you know, we just have to go out and teach them the difference.
Excellent point. Thank you, dear Deborah.
So can I add one more thing?
Please, Gabriel.
In that quote, it says, it is an immoral relationship, and we cannot accept as believers those who are openly behaving in this way. In my country, and I totally accept the Baha'i view on marriage, there's no issue with that, but marriage is no longer fashionable, and very few people now get married, and you have relatives, friends, family that live in various relationships. And but here it says we cannot accept that those who openly behave in this way. I feel it's at the moment, as we're trying to improve, the world is collapsing, and we do need to at some point accept people in the situation they're in. I don't know. Thoughts on that one?
These are the words of the Guardian. I understand, dear Gabrielle, what you're saying. The world is collapsing morally, and the beloved Guardian is putting the standard of what the faith is. And he's saying that, and he has expectations of what this new race of men should be.
But are they expectations of Baha'is or of non-Baha'is?
This is Baha'is. This is the Baha'is.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, I think we have to be accepting of non-Baha'is behavior.
Oh,
Right.
I understand that. Of course. Of course. Yeah. You're absolutely right, dear Gabrielle. But
that seems to be the common thing at the moment.
Yes, we have to be understanding to the general community. As the beloved Guardian is here, he's saying, and this is an immoral relationship of, and cannot accept as believers. This is the believers addressing. The beloved Guardian is writing to the Baha'i community. He was writing to the National Spiritual Assemblies listed on the bottom of the screen. So he was writing that this behavior is not acceptable. Okay. Let's just move on. There's a few more problems that we have to address, these immoral vices that we have to get through. Okay, one of the big ones, infidelity. In paragraph 47, the beloved Guardian is referring to infidelity in marriage. The word infidelity means being unfaithful and disloyal. Infidelity in a marriage means that one or both of the partners engages in an intimate and sexual relationship with someone outside the marriage. You could also be unfaithful mentally, right? It doesn't even have to be sexually. So you could just be unfaithful in your thoughts or words. And so this is just being unfaithful. So those are being unfaithful, infidelity. Okay, so let us have a reader. Let me find our next reader. And our next reader is Riaz John, you're up.
Infidelity. In the Baha'i teachings, fidelity and faithfulness are critical characteristics of a chaste and holy life. In a letter written on behalf of Shogh Effendi to an individual dated 28 September 1941, this point is emphasized. The question you raise as to the place in one's life that a deep bond of love with someone we meet other than our husband or wife can have is easily defined in view of the teachings. Chastity implies both before and after marriage an unsullied, chaste sex life. Before marriage, absolute chastity. After marriage, absolutely faithful to one's chosen companion, faithful in all sexual acts, faithful in word and in deed.
Excellent, Rios John. Thoughts? This is the standard that the beloved guardian was quoted on, and this is quoted by the Universal House of Justice. This is, so it says, before marriage and after marriage, unsullied, chaste sex life. Before marriage, absolutely chaste. After marriage, absolutely faithful to one's chosen companion. Faithful in all our sexual acts, faithful in word and in deed. So this is to be absolutely faithful. Faithful is the word vafa, fidelity. It's to be faithful. It's one of the great qualities to be. There's a Suraya Vafa, the tablet of faithfulness in the writings. It's one of the great qualities to aspire to be faithful. And this is to be infidelity. And as Dr. Bai very correctly said, is that all of these qualities and attributes are at this level of the family. If we can build these qualities and attributes in that organic nucleus of a family, these are the building blocks to create this world commonwealth, this Baha'i world commonwealth that we are, each one of us, striving to build. And so here, the beloved guardian is now, and obviously Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, the beloved guardian, Universal House of Justice, are giving us the tools and saying, this is how we should, protect our marriages, protect our sexual lives in that sense, and have happy and joyful lives. To be faithful to one another. Because if we're not, we're going to bring problems to ourselves. And that's very evident in society. Okay, any thoughts? Anyone want to jump in, or we're moving on to our next slide? Okay. Getting to promiscuity. Okay, promiscuity. Is David there? David?
Promiscuity represents the indiscriminate practice of engaging in intimate and sexual relationships with different partners. What distinguishes promiscuity from other sexual behaviors is in its casual nature. A promiscuous individual is characterized by transient, unselective, and indiscriminate sexual behavior. Promiscuous behavior is very common today, and there are places and opportunities to meet others for such transient relationships.
Very well, thank you, dear David. Okay. So this is promiscuity, indiscriminate practice of engaging in intimate and sexual relationships with different partners. So now we're getting more and more deeper into these sexual immoralities. This is promiscuity. Okay, and this is a letter written on behalf of the beloved guardian. So I'm going to get Miss Deanie. You're up, Miss Deanie. Go for it.
In a letter written on behalf of the guardian, he references modern dance halls where promiscuity takes place. In the teachings, there is nothing against dancing, but the friend should remember that the standards of Baha'u'llah is modesty and chastity. The atmosphere of modern dance halls, where so much smoking and drinking and promiscuity goes on, is very bad, but decent dances are not harmful in themselves. There is certainly no harm in classical dancing or learning dancing in school. There is also no harm in taking part in dramas. Likewise, in cinema acting. The harmful things nowadays is not the art itself, but the unfortunate corruption which often surrounds these arts. As Baha'is, we need to avoid none of the arts, but acts and the atmosphere that sometimes go with these professions we should avoid.
Very well read. Thank you, Ms. Dini. Any thoughts on this extract? This is...
Comment there, if I may.
Please, David.
I was thinking how this really reflects back to the arts and this earlier conversation about, proper dress and, the prostitution of the arts, whether it's in cinema or in theater or in dance and these things. And it's very difficult today to have our children. I think the strength of morals that our children have to have in reflecting on what entertainments are out there and how degrading or demoralizing they are from the perspective of a youth and from a parent's perspective of their children. And I can't help but think how this is so profound, all these statements. So thank you.
Excellent point, dear David. I hope it's the parents protect their children from all of these, as mentioned, the prostitution of the arts in the movies, the programs that are on TV and everything, because it's really for the parents to protect their children, then leaving it up to their children to venture onto their own. And so that's it's because these things are, as mentioned by the beloved guardian, these are harmful things, says the harmful things nowadays. So these are harmful to our own spiritual life. Okay. Any other thoughts, dear friends?
I think these days we need the family virtues.
Yes, dear Tessaya, family virtues, that's correct. Yes, these are things that we should equip ourselves with. Yes, very, very good point.
There are certain abilities that we have been given, and they're always for a good purpose. For example, the sense of hunger. The sense of hunger is there so that we eat, and as a result, the body receives the necessary nourishment. And sexual impulses are another of those. But if just like eating, if a person overeats, and we know some cultures actually went in that direction, that would only cause harm. Or eating inappropriate things, it would equally cause harm. Sexual impulse in the context of marriage is for procreation, and of course within a family, within one man and one wife married, it could strengthen the family, it could strengthen the man and woman to be together and cope with all the difficulties of life that they come to them, particularly in the early years of marriage, that they're young. But the moment that they are abused, we begin to get into these kinds of things. When it's abused, it is using something which could be good, abusing it in the wrong direction. And of course, every one of them lead to greater and greater problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bayan.
You know, one of the things that I observe here is in the United States, people's instead of, coming to the faith and learn morality, then they go to the other direction, to the wrong one. More people are interested in better way than to the crooked way. So that's why we have messed up all the families, just like a fashion now, divorce and everything, everywhere, every time. You can see so many things, even in the Baha'i families.
That's true. That's true, dear Tesma. That's true.
I think as Baha'is, we are as vulnerable to these diseases of morality of society as everybody else. But the whole idea has been that we have to create a model. The Baha'i faith is called a ship, an ark. That's why it's called an ark. So that those who enter and accept these teachings and practice them, they will be saved, as opposed to those who would drown. Metaphorically speaking, of course, I'm talking about. So the Baha'is could be as vulnerable, yes, to all of these problems as anybody else. Thank you.
You mentioned the ark. In the writings, there's reference to the crimson ark. Could you explain that? Thank you.
Yes, in the early days of the faith, we are aware of 20 or 30,000 lives were given to nurture this faith. And also it continued during the Baha'i dispensation as well. Lots of lives is lost. That's why this ark that God has created to save mankind is sailing on a sea of blood. So one of the meanings is this, but there are other meanings to it as well. But this is one of the aspects of it.
Riaz John, I can send you many extracts on that. As you know, this is called the Crimson Academy. And, and the Crimson has, I've actually have many extracts, a mini compilation on Crimson, because it is the Crimson Academy, right? So many people ask me why Ehsan is it called Crimson Academy? It's because we are the people of the Crimson Ark. And this is the Crimson Ark of Baha'u'llah. And as Dr. Bait mentioned, crimson is the color of sacrifice. And as this faith was born in sacrifice by thousands of Babis and Baha'is giving and shedding their blood to promulgate his name. This is how it started. And it's not just in Iran, but it's also the friends in the West sacrificing their lives to go and all over this planet and promote his name. So this is sacrifice. So this is the people of Baha, the Crimson people of Baha. And so that's why I chose the Crimson Academy, because it also takes sacrifice to really delve into the writings. So this is where the color of crimson comes from. Thank you so much, dear Oligaz. Okay, so let us continue on this theme of promiscuity, and we're now entering into easy familiarity. And in this terminology, easy familiarity, I looked this terminology up of these two words together, and I couldn't find them anywhere together other than the beloved guardian. So this is these two words sitting together is the only place I could ever find it to these easy familiarity was the usage of the beloved guardian, and obviously the House of Justice quoting the beloved guardian. So let's read this extract. In modern English, one of the meanings of familiarity is relaxed, friendly, informal, and intimate behavior. In Middle English, around circa 1150 to 1470, the word familiarity conveyed sexual intimacy and close relationship. This seems to be the context in which the beloved guardian Shaykh Effendi has used this term in paragraph 47. As far as the Baha'i writings are concerned, this is the only reference made to the specific term easy familiarity in the published authoritative works. So this is the only reference in the entire body of the writings in authoritative. And then interestingly, it's the only reference of easy familiarity outside of the faith. And
he created it.
Yeah,
that's the beloved guardian word. He created it.
Exactly. And so, but there's obviously, what's it called? Unauthoritative, which is pilgrim notes on it. And so I'm going to share those with you right now. So this is an unpublished letter to an individual written on behalf of the Universal House of Justice, dated February 5th, 1992. And it provides some elucidation on easy familiarity. And this is from an unpublished letter from the Universal House of Justice. It says, as you know, in the advent of divine justice, Shoghi Effendi has stated the principles of Baha'i conduct. Certainly, the practice of indiscriminate kissing and embracing involving unrelated people of opposite sexes is not desirable and is discouraged, particularly in these days when restraints are being abolished one by one. The Baha'is should make great efforts to uphold in their personal lives and in their relationships to each other the standards of conduct set forth in the teachings. So it's indiscriminate kissing. So it's if you don't know that person and you're just like, mwah, 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 mwah. Many cultures do this. The Spanish, the Italians, they don't know anyone. They're just like, mwah, mwah. Arabs, a lot of cultures, they go, mwah, mwah. There's a joke of Maz Jobrani. He says sometimes the Arabs go 1, 2, 1, 2, and then the Persians, you don't know if it's 1, 2 this side. But it's really, indiscriminate kissing, and this is what is not allowed. This is the beloved guardian is saying this is not desirable and discouraged. Okay, and we should make great.
If it's simplified, it just means casual relationship.
Casual, it's more than that, Daejan. It's more than that. It's more than just being casual. It's going past the boundaries of propriety.
Yes.
And decency. Remember, we talked about decency as one of the 5 qualities of chaste and holy life is decency. And this is going past that morality aspect. Okay, I believe this might be the last one of the major issues is sexual vices. So let me get a reader. Dear Tesfaya, you're up. Go for it.
Okay. Vice is a behavior that is immoral and wicked. It can include criminal activities such as prostitution, pornography, or drugs or habits that are not criminal but immoral and unacceptable. Vice moral specifically reflects a practice that is ingrained in an individual as a habit. Sexual vices are habits that consider diversions to natural expressions of the sex impulse. Sexual vices such as masturbations may be personal and affect the spiritual health of an individual without any impact on others. There are other sexual vices such as sexual violence and pedophilia that can harm others, and society treats them as a criminal act.
Thank you, dear Tesfa.
Thank you.
So, as mentioned, these are sexual vices, and such as masturbation. It might be personal, but it affects the spiritual health of the individual. But there are other sexual vices that affect and impact others. And on the right, you can see just a list. These are just a small list. The list was quite long and actually would have taken several slides, unfortunately. So these are just some of them that are listed by the authorities. Sexual acts on a male child under 13, rape of a female under 16, under 13, males. You can see it. I don't have to read it, all of them, but this is really the reality of truly a sexually debased society, degenerate society. These type of acts
So that means there is no clean life, because in order to live clean lives, you have to be balanced and moderation together.
Exactly. Very true, dear Tesfaye. And there was one of the qualities that we were talking about when we were talking about was temperance. And that temperance is the restraining of the emotions, right? And it's controlling our emotions. We also should be in control of our sexual impulses, right? So that we are not letting any one of these drives, whether it's our anger drive, whether it's to be in control. And so this is one of the drives. We have that level of, a sexual drive. And if this drive is out of control, we see this expression as we're talking about these sexual vices happening. So, okay, now we're getting into the last section on this. In traditional religions, the concept of chastity implies that sexual relationships are acceptable when performed within the framework of marriage between a wife and a husband. All sexual acts outside of marriage are explicitly condemned. In Catholicism, chastity is considered the opposite of lust, which is classified as one of the 7 deadly sins. There's pride, there's greed, there's lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. In marriage, wife and husband are expected to commit to a lifelong relationship with fidelity, excluding sexual intimacy with other people. So this is a bit of a going back to what this chaste and holy life. So this is chastity, right? And this is the one incredible quote I came across from the Universal House of Justice. And this was from a letter written to the followers of Baha'u'llah in the cradle of the faith. So the friends in Iran. And this is an extract from that letter, and it was written 26 November 2003. And so the Universal House of Justice was writing to the friends in Iran and saying, raise your standard of character, be different, have this highest level of standard. And this is an extract from it. It says, one speck of chastity is greater than 1,000 years of worship and a sea of knowledge. Isn't that amazing? One speck of chastity is greater than 1,000 years of worship and the sea of knowledge. So it's saying, calling the believers in Iran, this is the letter, so that they raise their standard of chastity, so that they walk the talk, that they stand out, that they're different.
This is a beautiful quote, really nice.
Yes, thank you. Yes. I didn't write it, it was the Universal House of Justice, but beautiful.
No, well, whatever it is, it's really nice. Yes, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I have one question for you.
Please, dear Tesfaye.
Yeah, so in the Baha'i writings, what I know is marriage is eternal. So can you explain that is to be when we are here, crazy life in this world and the next world also will be together again?
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So how is that to be going to be eternal like that? Is that Baha'u'llah say like that, right? In the writings.
This is a big subject, dear Tesfaya, and dear Riaz, you bring up big subjects, you know? These are big subjects, you know? Yes, so I see lots of hands going up, okay? So whoever would like to answer this, I give you the floor, but we're only a few slides away from finishing up this section. So if you have, let me check my time.
Maybe for the next...
We got time. So let me finish this section and then we'll get to all of these, okay? These wonderful subjects, okay? And because we plan to finish today and then next week we're going to start a new part, okay? So hold that thought on that as marriage, how is it eternal, okay? Let's just finish this few more slides and then we'll get to that one. Okay, dear Tesfaya?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And anyone who raised their hand will get to your hands coming up, okay? Okay, let's finish this. In paragraph 48, His Holiness Baha'u'llah said that the worldly pleasures and delights are, in the sight of God, as worthless as dust and ashes. Pass beyond your evil and corrupt desires, as your own lusts hinder you from entering the straight and glorious path. Eschew all manner of wickedness. A race of men with great character shall be raised up, which with the feet of detachment will cast the sleeve of holiness over all that has been created from water and clay. If allowed, science will overleap the bounds of moderation and bring evil upon men. He must inhale the fragrance of sanctity. And if he met the fairest and most beautiful women, he would not feel his heart seduced by the least shadow of desire for her beauty. Those who follow their lusts and corrupt desires are of the lost. Baha'u'llah has made chastity to be a crown for the heads of his handmaidens. If God perceives from you acts of purity and holiness, he will most certainly bless you. It's always interesting to me that he uses the example of a beautiful woman. It's never a beautiful man, you know? That a beautiful man appears and the woman gets seduced by him, you know? I think women are more beautiful personally, and I think that's the example that he met the fairest and most beautiful women, that he would not feel his heart seduced. But the point of all of it is again, here Baha'u'llah is saying that he is raising a new race of men, right? With a great character. And this great character is being raised up, and with what? The feet of detachment. So again, we're talking about these qualities and attributes, which we talked about earlier. Okay. Now, we're getting into this, talking about alcohol. And then this is in paragraph 49. In paragraph 49, His Holiness Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha writes, I believe it's His Holiness, I don't know why, His Holiness Baha'u'llah Abdul Baha. That's probably a typo. Sorry about that, everyone. His Holiness, I think it's His Holiness Baha'u'llah writes that the drink...
No, it's not a typo. It says His Holiness Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha writes that...
Oh, so Abdul Baha is quoting His Holiness Baha'u'llah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Santabaya. Thank you. In paragraph 49, His Holiness Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha writes that drinking of wine, alcohol, is forbidden, for it is the cause of chronic diseases, weakens the nerves, and consumes the mind. We should become intoxicated with the wine of the love of God and not with that which deadens your minds. And I shared that funny episode in my life where someone was, wine is forbidden, so it's okay to drink beer or the other alcohols. And because it says drinking of wine is forbidden. And I was like, no, it's not just wine, it's all of them. So it's, that's why I put in parentheses, alcohol, drinking of. That is what it's meant, okay? In case anyone did not know that. Okay, now our last section, before we get into that exciting topic that dear Tesfaye mentioned about, are we going to stay with our wives through all the worlds of God? Before we get to that topic, let's get into denouncing of asceticism. So let us have a reader. Let me find my dear friend coming up. Pat McGregor, you're up. No, it's Pat O'Brien. There you are. I see you. Pat, go for it.
In paragraph 50, the beloved guardian emphasizes that the high moral standards laid down in the teachings of the faith should not be confused with any form of asceticism or of excessive and bigoted Puritanism. In asceticism, an individual abstains from physical pleasures in the belief that he will grow spiritually and attain salvation. There are different degrees of asceticism. In extreme cases, the individual completely withdraws from society and lives in isolation. In other forms, the ascetic remains in society, but renounces material possessions and physical pleasures. Historically, asceticism has been practiced by minority groups in all traditional religions, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Thank you, Pat. And on the right, it says, this is for my dear friend Don. He always has the definitions. It says asceticism. It's from the Greek word askesis, meaning exercise or training, a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from sensual pleasures, often for the purpose of pursuing spiritual goals. So, in essence, we should not be ascetics. This aspect of renouncing material possessions and physical pleasures, we should enjoy the world. We should enjoy all the wonderful gifts that have been given to us, but those should not come between us and our Lord. We should not be so attached to them that they come in between our Lord and us. So this is where detachment is. We should enjoy the things of the world. We should not be ascetics. Okay. Let us have, I think we're getting really close to the end. So let us have one more reader. James, could you read this one for us?
His Holiness Baha'u'llah explicitly states, living in seclusion or practicing asceticism is not acceptable in the presence of God. It behoveth them that are endued with insight and understanding to observe that which will cause joy and radiance. Such practices as are sprung from the loins of idle fancy or are begotten of the womb of superstition ill beseem men of knowledge. In former times, and more recently, some people have been taking up their abodes in the caves of the mountains, while others have repaired to graveyards at night. Say, give ear unto the counsels of this wronged one. Abandon the things current amongst you, and adapt that which the faithful counselor biddeth you. Deprive not yourselves of the bounties which have been created for your sake.
Excellent. Thank you, dear James. So this was a very common practice in Christianity, also in Islam. Many mystics, they would abandon the things, the material things, and go into caves. I don't know how there were so many caves, and they would go into caves and give away their possessions and then live a very menial life and often beg for food and livelihood and supposedly act very holy. And this is what how they were living. And Baha'u'llah says, living in seclusion or practicing of this asceticism is not acceptable. I don't think anyone in my class was thinking of planning to live ascetic lives, but this practice is not acceptable. And it says it behooveth them that are endued with insight and understanding to observe that which will cause joy and radiance. So this is what we should be striving towards. Creating joy and radiance. So this is, again, another law of Baha'u'llah, denouncing asceticism. Okay, one more, then this is from His Holiness Abdul Baha. And so you can see how this revelation is unfolding. His Holiness Baha'u'llah gives the standard, Abdul Baha, and this is in Promulgation of Universal Peace. He says, His Holiness Abdul Baha explains that the teachings of the faith do not imply that one should give up avocation and attainment to livelihood. On the contrary, in the cause of Baha'u'llah, monasticism and asceticism are not sanctioned. In this great cause, the light of guidance is shining and radiant. Baha'u'llah has even said that occupation and labor are devotion. All humanity must obtain a livelihood by sweat of the brow and bodily exertion, at the same time seeking to lift the burden of others, striving to be the source of comfort to souls, and facilitating the means of living. This in itself is devotion to God. Baha'u'llah has thereby encouraged action and stimulated service, but the energies of the heart must not be attached to these things. The soul must not be completely occupied with them. Though the mind is busy, the heart must be attracted toward the kingdom of God in order that the virtues of humanity may be attained from every direction and source.
Well, that sums it up.
Right? That's right, dear Pat. Any thoughts on it?
Oh, I didn't realize. I do have a thought.
Please, please, always love your thoughts. Go for it.
You know, as we were going through the many things that we must take care not to be doing, I had a flashback to my Catholic upbringing and to the nuns with their rulers and the things we would not do, which they reminded us of on a regular basis. But as earlier on, it was noted that this is not just meeting the requirements, living to requirements. The requirements alone are insufficient to the means. And that's why we rely on Baha'u'llah and the graces. But this paragraph here offers us, well, this is what we supplant those other things with. And instead of bemoaning the fact that we cannot do this and we cannot and we should not and we ought not to do those things, we should fill our lives with something else. And this is, you know, anyone who has worked with folks in the throes of addiction or similar things knows well, it's not enough to stand and lecture about what you shouldn't do. You have to fill yourself, or the individual must instead of worrying about saying no to some things, must have something far greater to say yes to and fill themselves with that overriding goal. And for us, that's the love of Baha'u'llah. So this paragraph is wonderful.
Great thoughts, dear Pat. Great thoughts. Any other thoughts?
Some of the practices that we are told not to follow are distortions of some teachings of earlier revelations. For example, Buddha intended that his followers would not develop a sense of pride. And in order to do that, somehow they became dependent for their livelihood on others. And as a result, the monks would go around begging for their food so that their pride disappears. So you can see somehow this is a distortion of something that would have been different. Or in the case of Islam, the early Sufis developed the idea of not indulging in so much pleasure, that the early wealth that by war they collected in a land that they didn't have anything before that. So they developed this ascetic life to stay away from those, and then this became the general tendency of the Sufi movement. So very often you find that these are corruptions of something that had some good intentions.
Excellent point, Dr. Bhatt. Thank you.
I'd have a question, and I wonder, someone can probably shed some light on this. But in the case of Buddhism, as an example so the monks and the idea of begging for the food also provides the opportunity for that service to be delivered by the other people, right? So it provides the opportunity for this gift of food as a gift of grace in the giving. So there's that social dynamic that is there, and I don't understand everything about Buddhism and the varied sects, but I do know that it is not uncommon for young men to go and to serve for 1 or 2 years, of course, to learn more, and also to be reminded quite directly of that humility, that lack of pride that they're supposed to have as they hold out their bowl. I think it's important to understand as your last speaker said, the social milieu of these things is strongly rooted in many cultures.
That's true. Thank you, Pat.
Often it's the corruption of the initial intention that brings it to a situation that someone for his entire life may not work for a single day. And 3 times a day would go around with a begging bowl and asking for food. So obviously this is a distortion. And it wasn't intended to go like that. The same goes for the Sufis and the mystics amongst the Sufis, who distorted many of the original teachings that came with Islam. But certainly we are asked not to follow that, particularly as Baha'u'llah adopted 2 years of solitude. It was important by Baha'u'llah himself, and then later on Abdul Baha and the beloved guardian, to remind us that they don't want us to live like ascetics, so that we don't start developing our own traditions of asceticism. So we are really very blessed that the route to those diversions have all been blocked. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhatt. Thank you. Okay. And this is the closing prayer, but before we get to our closing prayer, let me check the time. Well, it's exactly 8:30, but let's go to, if the friends want to, we can answer Dear Tesfaia's question, and then we can have our closing prayer. So Dear Tesfaia's question was, Dear Tesfaia, are you still with us?
I'm here. I'm not
There
going
you are,
anywhere.
Dear Tesfaia. So your question was, I'm going to recap it off the top of my head, was if we are married, how do we go stay married to our partner through, I guess, in the worlds to come? Is that correct? Or if you could recap state it?
Yeah, it's eternal. That's what it says in the writing. So how this can be happen, like when we are here divorced and so much differences and everything, and then what is that bounty is going to be? So who can claim it, and how is that to be possible?
I love it. Okay, so whoever raised their hands, I saw 2 hands go up. We have a James and we also have Roya John. So Roya, you got the floor first, and then James, you're next. Okay, go for it.
I just wanted to share with Tesfaya John that there is, if you YouTube it, there in one of the conferences, the beloved Mr. Nakhjawani, bless his soul, was asked the exact same question. There was somebody that said, if there are couples that don't get along with one another, are they doomed to tolerate one another in the next world? And he answered it beautifully. He answered it as to the only relationships that endure eternally are those that are founded spiritually. That means if our relationships are spiritually bonded, whether it's friendships, whether it's family, whether it's marriage, that's eternal. But if our relationships are superficial, physical, material, and no spiritual foundation, that will end with our physical life and will not endure the worlds of God. And I thought that was beautifully answered by beloved Mr. Nakhjawani, and I just wanted to share that with dear Tesfaya.
And that was answered beautifully by our dear Roya John. So thank you.
Thank you. But there is also another thing that if anyone is to be breaks this bond, either the husband or the wife, whatever the spouse is, going to be in trouble because Baha'u'llah is going to punish them. Is that right?
I didn't follow your question or statement. Could you restate it one more time? I heard just punish them.
Because the one you know that breaks the bond of the marriage, whichever the spouse is, either the man or the woman, whichever is breaks the bond, then it will be in trouble. Either in the next world or in this world, I don't know. Tell me about it.
Okay. Okay. James, you have the floor as yours. So you have that answer if you want to take that one. So if someone breaks the bone of the marriage, whether will they be punished either in this world or the next world? So you have the floor on that one. Go for it.
So I mean, I think Roya or Adi Charazade via Roya put it very well. But it's my understanding, and I'd be welcome to have it shown to me otherwise, there is nothing in the translated writings of the Baha'i faith that say that marriage is an eternal relationship for Baha'is. What there is plenty that says that the Baha'is who are married should have a relationship that endures through all the worlds of God, because that should be a spiritual relationship as well as a physical relationship. So marriage is a physical and a spiritual relationship, and the spiritual element of that relationship is an eternal relationship through all the worlds of God. And then I think there are the laws that relate to. I've just posted something in the chat that relates to the kind of the spiritual and the physical elements, and how, as Roya was saying, friends also can have that spiritual relationship that lasts through eternity. And then I think when it comes to sanctions, those sanctions relate to people breaking the physical bond of marriage. So, for example, I think that there is a penalty for adultery that says that if you don't face the pain in this world, you will face the pain in the next world. But I think that relates to the fact that you've broken that that physical bond rather than the spiritual bond. Yes, sorry, as I said it, I knew it was Mr. Natravani. Thank you, Roy, for clarifying that. That's all I wanted to say, I think.
Very well said. Very, very well said. Thank you, James.
I can just add one comment, because it was beautifully explained that it's a spiritual relationship that lasts, for the fact that in the next world we don't have man and wife. It's just spirits. Spirits have no sex attached to them. Even in this world, our spirit is sexless. It's just our body that has this aspect to it. So if you're really not getting along well with your wife in this world, well, you're not man and wife anymore in the next world anyway. You're two spirits. If you can tolerate each other and enjoy each other's company, you will be just like two birds flying together. That's what it is. And that's how it would last. It would last as friendship, spiritual relationship. And that's how we want the marriage not to end at this world. So the spiritual dimension of it, we would like it to continue, and it will continue. Thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you, Dr. Bhatt. And we have another hand from our dear Karen, and we're getting to our close. So if we have any other hands, just let me know. So dear Karen, you're up.
I didn't raise my hand, honest.
Okay.
I'm learning, listening to so much of what everyone is saying.
Okay, excellent. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this? Or Tesfaye, we're good on your question?
Yeah, I'm all right.
We hope we answered your question on that one. And if not, hopefully we'll get an answer coming up later. And so, dear friends, without any further ado, I share with you our closing prayer. So this is a prayer that I found in selections from the writings of Abdul Baha. And the lucky person I'm going to ask to read the closing prayer is Miss Kathy. Miss Kathy, you are our prayer reader for tonight.
O divine providence, bestow thou in all things purity and cleanliness upon the people of Baha. Grant that they may be freed from all defilement and released from all addictions. Save them from committing any repugnant act. Unbind them from the chains of every evil habit, that they may live pure and free, wholesome and cleanly, worthy to serve at thy sacred threshold, and fit to be related to their Lord. Deliver them from the intoxicating drinks and tobacco. Save them, rescue them from this opium that bringeth on madness. Suffer them to enjoy the sweet savors of holiness, that they may drink deep of the mystic cup of heavenly love, and know the rapture of being drawn ever closer into the realm of the all-glorious. For it is even as thou hast said, all that thou hast in thy cellar will not appease the thirst of my love. Bring me, O cupbearer, of the wine of the spirit of a cup, full as the sea.
Thank you so much, dear friends. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Allah Pa.
Allah Pa. And hope I'm wishing you
a beautiful prayer.
Fasting.
Such a beautiful prayer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes part 13, dear friends.
All right.